What's going on, everyone? It's Adrian from Draft Time, and tomorrow night is opening night for the NBA. You got the Sixers at the Celtics, and then you got the Lakers at the Warriors. Nice little two-game slate, full of studs, full of star power. So let's go ahead and get right into the DFS strategy. So right off the bat, who's on the injury report? We got Marcus Smart and Malcolm Brogdon. They're both questionable, but it's looking like both of them are going to end up playing. But another guy you want to keep an eye on who might miss the game is Russell Westbrook. So if he does in fact miss the game, then that's going to add huge value to a lot of those other Lakers players, specifically Pat Bev, Lonnie Walker, Kendrick Nunn, and Austin Reeves. So those guys you want to take a look at if Westbrook ends up missing the game. Going right into our value picks, who's some of the top value guys? So let's go ahead and sort this by value. And right off the bat, you see that Draymond is the top value pick. He's the highest valued player, 5.31 fantasy points per $1,000 on FanDuel. And right after that, you got Pat Bev, Derek White. Derek White's only 4,400, and he's pretty much the sixth man for that Boston Celtics team, even with Brogdon. And they have a pretty thin bench. So those are guys you want to look at for value plays. Patrick Beverley, especially if Westbrook ends up missing the game, he's a pretty good value player. He averaged 26 fantasy points per game last season. He's only $4,900 on FanDuel. So let's go ahead and look at DraftKings and see who some of those value plays are. And for DraftKings, you got Kendrick Nunn. He's only $3,000 on DraftKings. So you definitely want to take a look at him. We have him projected for 20.3 fantasy points. He missed all of last season, but he was their third leading scorer in the preseason. Probably going to end up being a starter. If he's not a starter, he's going to be a sixth man coming off the bench, giving you points. So he's a pretty good value pick at $3,000. Another guy is Tyrese Maxi. He's only $5,000 on DraftKings, and he's a guy who averaged 30-plus fantasy points last season. Going to be pretty much in that same role. Even when Harden went over to the team, he was still a third option, still was a pretty good scorer. Al Horford's only $4,900 on DraftKings. So that's another guy you want to take a look at. I know Robert Williams is going to be out, and really they don't have much more, that many more bigs coming off the bench. You got maybe Grant Williams, maybe even Blake Griffin will see some action. But I like Al Horford on DraftKings at $4,900. Now let's go back to FanDuel, and let's take a look at some of these studs. You got Joel Embiid, LeBron James, Jason Tatum, Steph Curry, Anthony Davis, and James Harden. You got 6 studs on one slate. So it's kind of tough to decide, which of these studs you want to go with. Joel Embiid is probably going to end up in a lot of lineups just because he's at that center spot. He's the highest projected player on the slate. Another guy who's going to end up in a bunch of lineups is Jason Tatum. He's $9,800. We have him projected 45 fantasy points. In that small forward, power forward spot, he's going to end up in a lot of lineups. Not a lot of competition there. LeBron James is up there, but he's the most expensive guy on the slate, $10,800. And theoretically, he shouldn't do that well against the Golden State Warriors, although he did pretty decent against them last season. I think last season, let's take a look here. He averaged 60 fantasy points per game against them last season. So he has had some luck against them, but they should do a pretty good job on him with Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, Draymond Green. But out of all those guys, James Harden sitting at 8,900 looks pretty nice over there. And, he's had his issues in Philly. He's been on the record as saying he wants to be a bigger part of that offense in Philly. So, at $8,900, I think that's a pretty good price for someone like James Harden. Now let's go ahead and take a look at DraftKings. And for DraftKings, pretty much the same thing. You got the same studs. James Harden, $8,900 on DraftKings, not quite as valuable as he is on FanDuel. But one guy I really like on DraftKings is Anthony Davis, sitting there at $8,500. Definitely has double-double potential. And not only that, if Westbrook ends up missing, his value is going to be so much higher. Now, let's go ahead and look at some of the top-owned guys on this slate. You got Tyrese Maxi, LeBron James, Kendrick Nunn, Draymond Green. All these guys should be pretty heavily owned. But if you scroll down here, PJ Tucker sitting at $3,700 over here is a pretty good sleeper pick. We have him projected to be 5.26% owned. All it takes is for him to score a few buckets, get a couple blocks and some rebounds, and he's already at 30 fantasy points, which is huge value for a guy that's only $3,700. So he definitely has pretty big sleeper potential. Another guy I want to look at on FanDuel is Blake Griffin sitting there at $3,700. Pretty good price, almost min priced on FanDuel. We only have him projected for 8.79 fantasy points because really we don't know what kind of role he's going to play over there in Boston, but he does have the potential to play pretty big minutes next game with Robert Williams out. So between him and Grant Williams, I do expect one of them to score 20 plus. Not sure exactly who out of the two of them is going to score 20 plus, but it wouldn't surprise me if either of them scored 20 plus fantasy points. So Blake Griffin definitely has some sleeper potential on FanDuel. Another guy you want to look at is James Wiseman. We have him projected to score 16 fantasy points. He's $5,000, 4.49% ownership because it looks like Looney's going to be that starter, but I wouldn't mind excluding Looney in some lineups and locking in Wiseman just in case he ends up playing more minutes than Looney, which is a possibility. So anyways, with all that being said, let's go ahead and let's run the top lineup for FanDuel and let's see what it spits out. Okay, so you got Marcus Smart, Pat Bev, Derek White, Jordan Poole, Jaylen Brown, Lonnie Walker, Tatum, Draymond Green, and Joel Embiid on FanDuel. Okay, so let's go ahead and run it for DraftKings and let's see what it spits out. For DraftKings, you got Marcus Smart, Pat Bev, Jason Tatum, Draymond Green, Anthony Davis, who's a pretty good value pick like I was talking about on DraftKings, Tyrese Maxi, LeBron James, and Kendrick Nunn. So those are the top lineups. It's probably going to end up changing tomorrow, especially if Westbrook ends up missing the game. If you guys want access to our lineup optimizer, which is what we're looking at right now, has all of our projections, all of our ownership projections. You know, you can generate lineups on the fly, build strategies on the fly. Go ahead and sign up for drafttime.com. We offer a free 7-day trial for anyone who's interested in trying our tools. You could cancel anytime before the 7 days are done. So go ahead and take a look at that before the NBA season starts.